Hi, Josh and Con here from Flux Magnetic Studios.
Cheap mics versus medium priced versus expensive mics.
Let's go.
So let's jump right into it. For the cheap set, we have a set named Superlux, model DRK-E4C2. This cheap set was probably made for home recording and sound reinforcement applications. We got a snare mic, two tom mics, a kick drum mic, and a pair of pencil condensers for the overheads. So for the medium priced option, we have the Shure DMK57-52. This kit has two toms, a kick drum, and a snare mic, but it does not have the overheads. So we took the liberty and we added a pair of Aston Origins to compensate for that. And for the expensive pick, we have vintage mics from various decades. So we placed our kick drum in the dead center a few inches away from the resonant head, pointing at the pedal beater that is on the other side. This should give us a good starting point to get a decent sound. And remember that each mic has a unique frequency response, so there's no one-for-all solution when it comes to finding a perfect spot to get a desirable tone. Try multiple angles and locations until you get the result that you're after. For the snare, we chose the conventional spot right at the edge of the drum, pointing at the center. We pointed the rack tom mic right in between the two toms since we don't have any extra mics to cover everything. Floor toms are set up the same way as the rack toms, with the mic a few inches away from the heads. For the overheads, we chose a space pair configuration since it's the most commonly used and easy to set up when both pencil mics are pointing at the snare.
Okay, we used the same miking technique on all the sets to keep things consistent.
Let's listen to it. Wow, well, that was interesting. We just set up the cheap mics and we recorded with them, and it was a surprise. They came out fairly decent. The good news is that the tom mics and the snare mic, which are the same type of mic in this package, they sound pretty decent, actually.
Yeah, the kick mic was lacking a bit of refinement, and it sounded pillowy, and was lacking top end, as to be expected in this price range. And the overheads were lacking, a bit of refinement on the high end, and were a little bit fizzy. But everything held up pretty well together and sounded like a complete package, which was pretty surprising for $100 mark, that you would expect you would be spending on something like this.
Yeah, it's really cheap. It just goes to show that if you pay attention and put care into microphone placement, that even with cheap mics, you're going to get something decent out of it.
Yep, so with that said, let's move on to the next thing.
Let's go. All right, we just got done with the medium price microphone setup and got some good results. We pretty much have a SM57 across the board situation because we have those set up on the toms and the snare drum. The Shure SM57 is known as the workhorse of the studio. It's very versatile. It's a jack of all trades. You can put it on a guitar cabinet, you can put it on a drum, you can put it on anything, and you'll get decent results out of it. And then you also have the Shure Beta 52 kick drum microphone, which really holds its own in the studio. A lot of studios use that.
Yeah, as for the Astons, we're pretty surprised to find that they don't have a lot of low end and they have lots of top end. So, which is fairly untypical for large diaphragm condensers. The whole setup was given off kind of indie vibes to us, and it sounded very similar to a lot of indie records that we've heard before. Which is not surprising, I'm pretty sure. Lots of indie artists and the indie recording studios used 57s on pretty much everything because they're ubiquitous and they're cheap and they deliver.
I know I did when I played in an indie rock band.
Oh, there you have it.
Yeah.
So, with that said, let's just move on to the next thing.
The expensive microphones. Let's go. All right, so we got the results, we listened to it, and no surprise, the expensive microphone set is our favorite of the bunch.
Here we have such great mics as Neumann U87 that we used for drum overheads, and Sennheiser MD421 that we used for toms.
And on the snare drum, instead of the typical Shure SM57, we used that microphone's predecessor, the Shure Unidyne 545, which is a little bit less nasally than the 57 and just generally sounds better to our ears for snare drum.
Yeah, and the kick we used AKG D12, which is in the same family as D20 and D30, and those mics were used all over the Rolling Stones and Beatles records, Led Zeppelin, you name it. Lots of bands from late 60s and early 70s used them.
They just sound great. They're very expensive, and it is, as a result of all this expensive fanciness, you get a nice extended low end, you get nice sparkly high end, and just generally it sounds more complex and nuanced and just sounds great. All right, well, that was interesting and informative, and we got some good results out of those 3 tests. To begin with, the cheap microphone setup actually surprised us. Those were surprisingly decent and sounded great for the price. As for the intermediately priced microphones...
Yeah, we were a little bit in for a surprise, more like an underwhelming type of surprise. Well, when you have like 3 57s in the mix, I guess that leaves a certain footprint on your tone.
I mean, I mentioned before that the 57s are kind of nasally and maybe honky. Well, imagine multiplying that by 3 on the kit. It's just too nasally.
Yeah, too many 57s. And Astons, in the capacity of overhead mics, did not really deliver, so maybe there's a better use for them, but we were kind of not impressed by them.
They're a little too bright and crispy, right? A little too brittle on the high end.
Yeah,
not
they're
good for overheads.
Kind of not there for the overheads.
Yeah. But the expensive mics, hoo-wee.
Yeah, well, there you pretty much get what you would expect. You know, they deliver. They're like Big Mac, like the Coca-Cola, like AC/DC.
Reliable and good.
Reliable and, well, good. You know, if you're after that type of sound, it's good. You know, if you want the Coke, then you buy the Coke, and this is what you get. If you like AC/DC, you buy the record. You know what you get. You know what to expect when you walk into a store and get an AC/DC record.
Absolutely, just sounds great every time. But that's what we think. We'd like to hear your thoughts. What kind of microphones do you use on your kit? We'd like to hear it. So please leave your comments in the section below and
Like and
subscribe.
subscribe.
Thank you.